We're back with lines 351 to 355, in which Aeneas is continuing his lawyerly account of why he must go to Italy and justifying himself to Dido. Me patris anchisae quotiens umentibus umbris nox operit terras, quotiens astrigneia surgunt, admonet in somnis, et turbida terret imago. Now the order's somewhat askew here. So he starts with me, and this is good because we have me and then me down here, which I didn't read yet, but there's an anaphora going on here where he's emphasizing himself. And we have to wait a while for the verb. So I'm going to show you the verb. The verb of the main sentence is admonet and then terret. And the subject does not come until here, imago turbida, the troubled image. But the genitive that goes with it, which is essentially the subject, patris anchisae, does come in the beginning of the sentence here. So you got to remember that that goes with that. So if we did it in English, we would say, the troubled image of my father Anchises warns and terrifies me in my sleep. And then we have these other clauses that go in here. In Latin, you have to wait a while for the main part of the subject, so it's more like me, my father Anchises, warns and terrifies, and his troubled image terrifies me. So just think of the word order here as you're looking at this. Vergil, no doubt, did it for a reason, to emphasize things and to make it read a certain way. But let's work on translating the whole thing, and then you can appreciate that. So, me patris anchisae, here's the main part. The troubled image of my father Anchises warns me, that's an accusative, and terrifies me in somnis, in my sleep. Now that's ablative of place where, in my dreams, in my sleep, literally dreams. And now we have these little clauses here, quotiens, as often as, and then another as often as. And so there's a little subject of each of these clauses. As often as night covers the lands with dewy shades. So as often as night, subject of this little clause here, covers the lands, accusative. And how does it cover them? Ablative, with dewy shades. I think of umentibus as coming from humidus, which sounds like humid, right? It's probably related. I didn't look it up. But as often as night covers the land with dewy shades, shadows, think of the nighttime as being somewhat damp and cold. It's a nice phrase here, a nice effect, and nice alliteration. Umentibus umbris. As often, and I like the anaphora there too. They're placed very parallel to each other. As often as the fiery stars rise. And that's very nice because you got dewy, cold, damp shadows at night, but then you also have fiery stars. So what a contrast going on here. Surgunt, rise, meaning rise in the sky. So let's do that whole thing. The troubled image of my father Anchises warns and terrifies me in my dreams, as often as night covers the lands with dewy shadows, as often as the fiery stars rise. Next part. Me puer Ascanius capitis quiniuria cari, quem reg nesperiae frau det fatalibus arvis. Now we got this may again, so we're going to carry the same verbs and thought of this part into this part. And I think that the may signals that to us a little bit. There's no verb in this part, so you got to put in admonet again, or some kind of general verb that captures the idea of these two verbs, warning and terrifying him. Maybe moves him, you could use komoet, you could use admonet, but something like that you have to insert into this second part. So just carry the verbal idea into this part. Puer Ascanius is the subject. My boy, Ascanius, that's his son, right? Warns or moves me, that's the accusative. And, the que here, the injuria capitis cari, and the injury. And now we have genitives of his dear head. The injury to his dear head. Now, he's not actually getting a physical injury, but by Aeneas staying in Carthage and denying him his legacy in Italy, he is injuring his son. You could maybe smooth this out a little bit by saying the thought of my boy Ascanius moves or warns me, and the injury done, I'm putting in the word done, to his dear head, meaning on account of this. So it's a poetic way of saying this, and to make it all make more logical sense in English, we have to add some words. But poetically, it works very well. Me puer Ascanius, capitis quiniuria cari. Quem regno Hesperiae fraudet fatalibus arvis. Whom, fraudo, now this is a verb here. I is the subject of it. See the O, ego. Whom I am denying or depriving. Think of the word fraud, fraudulent in English, to deceive someone. And this is all a relative clause here, so we'll bracket it off like that. Whom, this is referring to Ascanius, and it's accusative. That's the accusative form of the relative pronoun in masculine singular. Whom I, subject, am depriving from the regno Hesperiae, from the kingdom, Hesperiae, genitive, of Italy. Hesperia is another word for Italy. We had Ausonia earlier, Hesperia, also the Greek term for Italy. And fatalibus arvis, and I'm depriving of the fatalibus aris, his fated fields, or his fated lands. He is going to get these lands by fate. And I think these are ablatives of separation, because he's keeping Ascanius from these places. A regno et a fatalibus arvis, whom I am depriving from. He's keeping him away from. And the sense of the ablative definitely carries the idea of being away from something. Away from something is with the ablative, to something is with the accusative. In fact, the beginning of the spelling of ablative, right, has an ab with it. To be carried away, literally, is what the ablative means. Let's put the whole thing together one more time here so you can see it all together, and then we'll be done. The troubled image of my father Anchises moves, or warns, I should say, and terrorizes me in my dreams, as often as night covers the lands with dewy shadows, as often as the fiery stars rise. My boy Ascanius warns me, or moves me, and the injury, add in done, to his dear head, or the injury literally of his dear head, whom I am depriving from the kingdom of Italy and from his fated lands.